Okay, so once we've annotated our text, then we're ready to begin writing. But before we actually start putting pen to paper on our line paper, we want to think about the key ingredients for our paragraphs. So there are a couple of things when you are writing in English that you're going to include in your paragraphs. So I call them evidence. When we are quoting from the text, when we are copying exactly what the text says to prove our point, I call that evidence. And we've underlined some evidence today already. So I'm just going to label that here, evidence, and draw some little arrows. Okay. So I'm going to repeat because it's so important. Evidence is when you copy the words straight from the text to prove your idea. So we've underlined these two bits, and that's the evidence I'm going to use in my paragraph in just a minute. Okay, and the other thing that you need when you're writing in English to answer a question, you have to explain your evidence. It's not enough just to copy it from the text. You also then have to tell us, show us that you understand what that means. So I call that bit the explanation. So this bit here is an explanation. And this bit here is also an explanation. Okay, this bit we probably already know, but that is our question. So I'm just going to label that too because that will be helpful. Okay, so I've labeled my key bits, and now I'm going to start writing an answer to this question here on the bottom. The first thing I like to do, if it's not already done for me on the paper, is to copy the question at the top. So I'm going to zoom out a teeny bit so you can see my whole sheet of lined paper. But I'm going to come to the top of my lined paper. I'm going to give it a quick title. I'm going to call it Writing in English. Okay. And you can underline that if you want. Today is the 27th. Oh, it's not the 10th. It's not 2010. I've just gone back a decade. Okay. I'm not sure which page this is going to be for us 7A. We'll figure that out in a minute. As long as you've got the title on it, we're good to go. Okay, and the next thing I just want to do is copy out that question so that it goes at the top of my paper. So the question, I'm just going to fold this so I can have the question right next to it. You don't have to do that. I'm just going to do, what is May's relationship like with Hiram? You want to stay really focused on the question when you're writing in response to something. Don't get off topic. That's why I like to copy it out at the top of my paper so I can stay really closely connected to that question. In an assessment in English, when you're writing like this, if you talk about something that is not connected to the question, you don't earn any marks. You don't lose marks either, but you don't earn any, so you're kind of wasting your energy. So you always want to stay really focused on the question. Okay, so I got the question now at the top, and I'm ready to go. So the first step I do when I'm writing a paragraph like this in English is I answer the question. So I like to echo or copy some of the language from the question to start off my paragraphs. I'm going to say, in May be, I'm going to put quotes around the title, May relationship with Hiram is, and I'm going to take Julia's word to answer this question, complicated. Okay, so I've echoed the same words that are in the question and then just substituted my idea, or actually Julia's idea. I've taken hers. So I've answered the question, right? I've told the person who's reading my paper what I think, but now I have to prove it. And that's when we need evidence. If you want to think about it like a crime, right? I've said the relationship is complicated, but I don't have the evidence to prove. So with a crime, you've got to prove somebody's committed the crime, so you have to prove that your answer is correct. So I've got to use my evidence. here's how I use evidence, how I write evidence in English. And I want to make a real distinction here between primary writing and secondary writing. A lot of you on the Wonder assessment asked if you could answer in bullet points. On your SATs, that was okay. But now in secondary school, that's not okay. You have to answer in complete sentences, and you have to answer in paragraphs. And you will lose marks if you don't do that. Okay, so it's really important. So I'm not going to make a new line because this is a paragraph, so I'm going to answer in a complete sentence. I'm going to give some evidence. I'm going to say, for instance, in the poem, it says. Now I'm copying from the text, so I want to show that I'm copying. So I put a comma and then a quote mark, right, an inverted comma. And then I copy it exactly. For cutting my hair. So all I've done is I've taken this bit of evidence right here and I've copied it right there. I just introduced it by saying, for instance, in the poem it says, for cutting my hair. Full stop, end quote. So I've given the evidence. But I haven't really explained it. And I reckon if somebody was reading this, they'd be like, well, what does that have to do with having a complicated relationship? So I need to make sure the person who's reading this understands why this reference to Hiram cutting May's hair means they have a complicated relationship. So now I've got to come back to this explanation down here about the dare, and I've got to work that in. I could take exactly what I've written and just copy it. I'm going to just mix it up a little bit so it's nice and clear. So I'm going to say, May has punched Hiram for cutting her hair, even though she was the one who dared him to do it. This shows their relationship is... Now, you're getting caught up with the copying, so I'm going to talk a little bit while you're doing that. It's really tempting here. I've said May's relationship with Hiram is complicated. For instance, in the poem it says, for cutting my hair. Then I've explained that a bit more. May has punched Hiram for cutting her hair even though she was the one who dared him to do it. This shows their relationship is... 90% of you are going to want to use the word complicated again. Don't. Don't repeat the same word again. Come up with a new word. So, can I have a show of hands? If you can give me another word that kind of a synonym, a word that means roughly the same thing as complicated. If you can give me a synonym for complicated I could use instead. Can you raise your hand? Good. Give me one, Connell. Difficult. That's a nice one. Ali? Confusing. Any others? Lamar? Challenging. All really good choices. Aman? Puzzling. Yep. Baffling. Great vocabulary. I'm going to go, I think, with difficult for now, just because that's a nice, simple one that we can all use. I'd be very happy to see any of those words you've just come up with in your own paragraph. So this shows their relationship is difficult. Okay. So I have now answered the question. I've used evidence. Right, here's my answer. And I'm going to switch to my red. You don't have to write this bit. You can just look. I've answered the question. So this is my answer. Then I've given some evidence. That's right here. So that's my evidence. And then I've explained it. And this whole bit here is my explanation. So that is a complete answer to this question. If this question was worth 3 marks, right, that would be enough. Job done. You've earned your 3 marks. If this question was worth 5 or 6 marks, I'm going to need another bit of evidence and another bit of explanation to go with it. That's when I would come back to my text here and go to this example about how we said Hiram is kind to May because he doesn't hit her back. We use this evidence hooks his arm through mine, right? So if I wanted to build on this paragraph and make it a little bit longer, I would add that bit of evidence and explanation to this to earn myself 5 or 6 marks. I'm not going to do that right now. I'm just pointing it out to you. But these are the key ingredients for a paragraph in English when you're having to respond to a question about reading. You answer the question by echoing the language in the question. You use evidence, which you've copied directly from the text, and then you explain that evidence in your own words, and you aim not to repeat yourself. So try not to repeat that, right? And that would be a really solid answer in your assessment next week.